Hello, my name is Austin Shadle, and welcome back to the Life Endurance Podcast, where we explore methods of unlocking your true potential in the greatest endurance race we all partake in, life. My guest today is David Everson. He is an accomplished ultra runner as well as a running coach and all-around awesome member of the running community. With my own first 100-miler coming up, really appreciated getting to talk to him and get some pointers on what it's going to be like tackling a much higher number in terms of miles than I ever have before. And whether you're a runner or not, I hope you find this conversation interesting. Let's hop into it. How are we doing today, David?
Oh, it's a good day. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad we finally get you on. We met at a local running club, which I think I've probably brought up before on this podcast. It's been just awesome to be able to meet more people there. Let's start out, maybe kind of get to know your background when it comes to running. I'm sure you've been at it for a while. Where did it all start for you?
You know, I did the short distance stuff through high school, and then it wasn't until my mid-20s, actually a bucket list thing to run a marathon. I hit that in 2016, and I don't think I've ever really moved past the bucket list stuff from that. I just kept adding more and more running stuff to it. So I tackled my first 100-miler in 2020, and I just haven't taken the pedal,
Wow.
the foot off the pedal ever since then. So I've done, 10 or 11 100-mile or longer races at this point.
Wow.
It's been a lot of fun. I cannot get enough of it. I've done some of the pretty tough ones also. Uray 100, 42,000 feet of gain. Bigfoot 200, 46,000 feet of gain. I love those really tough mountain races. I'm a horrible climber, but I like confronting my weaknesses, so
Yeah.
I just keep stacking them more and more. Been a little bit of a down year this year, but next year I do have a lot of races on the docket, and I'm really excited to dig into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what was your first 100?
My first 100, it was Cloud Splitter 100 out in Virginia.
Okay.
But it wasn't supposed to be. COVID kind of wiped out, I think, so many people's race plans back in 2020. It was supposed to be Run Rabbit Run right here in Colorado, Steamboat Springs.
Yep.
Which I've done that one twice now, actually, so I got back around to it. But
Okay.
yeah.
What kind of elevation gain did that one have?
Run Rabbit Run has, around 20,000 feet, but Cloud Splitter has about 24.
Oh, wow.
But what's nice is you're much closer to sea level. There's a lot more oxygen to be, making those climbs out in Virginia, of course.
Yeah, for sure. And was that, where were you living and training leading up to that one?
Yeah, I've been here in Colorado Springs my entire time as an ultra runner.
Okay.
I feel like so many people maybe don't even intend to become runners, trail runners, ultra runners, any of it. Oh my gosh, with these mountains on the horizon, how do you not get up into them though?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's amazing. My roommates and I, or my active friends, we're always like, when we see people that live out here and they don't go do the mountain things, we're just like, what are you doing here then? Like, it's just, I don't know, it's so amazing. It's been pretty life-changing for me being out here a little over a year now, and always having that want to do ultras, or at least since I did my Ironman, what has that been? 2021, I think. And I was just wanted to get somewhere interesting where I could train and start dipping my toes into that. And yeah, here we are when I'm about three weeks out or so from my first 100. So yeah, it's big milestone coming up. That's been the big focus for the year.
Oh yeah.
And like we were chatting about before we started this, I think this is the first time I've ever pulled out of a race. So I was supposed to have a race this weekend, which is about 40 miles. It's called the Grand Traverse, and you go from Crested Butte to Aspen, Colorado. And man, it would have been a cool race. Maybe I'll try to sign up again for it next year and have it be a little less like of a serious focus. But I made it this whole year, no sense of injuries, nothing going on. And then I had one really rough long run. And then 2 days later, not even the next day, but 2 days later, my knee just felt horrible. And even a week later, still didn't feel like 100%. And that's a week out for I would be racing this Saturday. And yeah, since the 100's the the big focus. I'm like, yeah, I can't risk it at this race. I could finish. I feel like I have little doubt of that, but it would be at what cost beyond that with the 100 being 3 weeks later. So,
Yeah, I mean, always a bummer to miss a race, especially Grand Traverse. Not what
hmm
I've done, but just heard so many amazing things about. But you're exactly right. Under the circumstances, what do you have to gain compared to what is your risk going into this?
hmm
And letting things relax a little bit. I mean, I think your head's in the right place with the decision making there.
yeah, yeah. It's a bummer, but I think it'll be good. Uh, yeah, I kind of like trying to think. I don't know, since you have so much experience, what would your advice be for the next 3 weeks? As somebody like my knees are feeling a little. They've been progressively getting better, but they're still not good enough that I would want to go run a big race this weekend.
Yeah, do you have a
I don't.
bike?
I do. Yep, I got a road and a mountain bike now. So.
Man, honestly, you have already put in so many miles on your legs this year.
Hmm
I would be leaning into the bike as long as that doesn't aggravate the knee. It tends to be a lot easier, on the joint groups in general, but especially
hmm
the knees. I would really be hammering a bunch of miles, both time on feet or time on wheels, as it were,
Yeah.
as well as maybe even doing like some sprint style interval things to continue to work on that aerobic base just a little bit more.
hmm
And I would do it on the bike. There's a guy I coach who just actually got his very first 100-mile buckle at Leadville 100. His name's Andrew Phillips, and he had a meniscus stem cell injection on his knee done less than 3 months before that race, and there was not a
hmm
whole lot of running allowed to happen,
Oh,
for a
okay.
couple months after that injection. So the majority of his training actually came from cycling, and he was still
Hmm.
able to be really successful in that race. And yeah, I mean, crossed the finish line there.
Okay. That's
So
yeah, that's good to know because I've never really been able to tell, if there's much benefit, to get from between the two. But like you said, I mean, that's kind of why I'm not too particularly worried, at least yet for the 100, is because I know I have put in so many miles, and especially after last year, I did up to a couple 50 milers, and were definitely really hard. And by the end of those, I was like, man, I still can't even imagine what 100 will be like.
that's the halfway
But
point.
yeah, yeah. And then it kind of settles in, and you like realize, just how much further you've gone from where you've started, and you're like, oh, okay, let's just do that again, and yeah.
It's that easy, right? Just do that again.
That is kind of like my roommate and I, we like to say what's the word? We gaslight people into getting into running. We just make them believe like that it's easy, and then we get them hooked on it. And I think because I like to promote running because it is simple and generally speaking, like you just for the most part you just go run and you don't have to think too hard. But
Yeah, I mean, the premise is simple for sure. I think most traditional race distances are exactly that. Yeah,
hmm
pretty simple 5K, 10K, half marathon. I know people who are admittedly decent athletes, right? But no
hmm
training, go rip off a half marathon,
hmm
maybe even a full marathon, depending on their athletic ability. But yeah, there comes a tipping point where with the ultras, maybe it's not so straightforward or
hmm
not so
yeah.
easy at a certain point. Um, and it's funny you mentioned, oh, 50 miler, let's just do that again. I feel like the race doesn't even start until about mile 60 a lot of the times.
Oh, okay.
That's really where both mentally and physically, you're maybe not going to be loving every moment of it,
hmm
which is all part of the experience in some weird sadistic way. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're doing this kind of thing, you have to enjoy suffering to an extent.
hmm
Um, and yeah, you will. I mean, you'll get those moments. You'll get moments of elation at the same time, though, and
hmm
it's hard for me to even put into words the feeling of crossing that finish line. I mean, of your
Yeah.
first 100, but of any 100,
hmm
it's awesome. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for it for sure. It's and especially when you do these races just out in the mountains, like that's such a cool part is you get out there so deep and you got there on your own 2 feet and you get that like view. I did my first 50 was in Crested Butte, and that was the one where it was a week after I had gotten COVID. and I was still sick as a dog. I like had hardly, I think I'd maybe ran 10 miles total the 2 weeks combined prior. So my legs were not like ready to suddenly move that much. And but the views were just so gorgeous, Crested Butte in like late September that, I was absolutely miserable, but mentally I was like, okay, it's just such an amazing experience.
Oh yeah, I mean Crested Butte is wonderful, and I'm pretty sure that's a Mad Moose race,
Yep.
right? They do, yeah. I mean, shout out to Mad Moose. They put on some really good events also. Um, but man, the views are amazing, and there's almost this little bit of like drop insurance when you're out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm.
How do you cut the race? How do you quit, right?
Yeah. That's another thing I was thinking of for if I would have done the Grand Traverse, especially because that's point to point, and like, it's 40 miles point to point, but it'd be a 3 hour drive if you took the roads. So like some people are saying like, oh, you could just drop, and I'm like, honestly, like that would be worse, I think, than just not starting, having to drop in the middle of a race like that.
Oh yeah.
Which, yeah, you'd have to get pulled out, or sit there until the aid station closed. I don't know how it all, because like if you're not, I suppose, critically injured, you'd probably just have to chill there. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Well, yeah.
that's 100% it. So I volunteer at a lot of races. I captain some aid stations. I'm a race medic, so I
Hmm.
do a lot on that side of the race also. And one of my favorite ploys to keep runners moving, uh,
Hmm.
like you're saying, if it's not a critical injury, if maybe it's more mental than physical, their feelings of, hey, I can't finish this race is, well,
Hmm.
hey, cool, you can hang out with us, but you're probably going to get to the finish line faster if you just
Oh,
keep
yeah.
running, right? Like,
Rather than sitting there all day.
oh yeah, 100%.
Hmm. Yeah. What is some of the, I'm trying to think of a specific question like related to helping out with races. I kept telling myself this year I'd try to find some time, go volunteer at a race, and in a good way, this year's just been crazy busy, going on lots of adventures and stuff. But yeah, what's some of your favorite, I don't know, things you've done or stories from helping out with the races?
Oh, gosh, I've been helping out with races for maybe a year or so now. More than just like showing up for a couple hours, like actually
Hmm.
helping like set up to breakdown, that type of helping out with races. And it's been great to see that side of things. It almost makes you appreciate the running side of it more when you see
Yeah.
how much work and effort goes into simply executing a lot of these events.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
people scoff a lot at like the price of some of these big endurance events, and I'm like, if you really think about it, like you got to section off or like mark 100 miles worth of trail, or an Ironman, you're doing 140 miles worth of through a city. So yeah, there's a lot to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was out at Bigfoot 200 in Washington a couple weeks ago helping out with that race, and there was an unfortunate circumstance with wildfires
Hmm.
where they weren't able to run the course as marked. Now, people did mark this 200-mile point-to-point course.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to use 40 miles of it.
Oh wow.
I mean, just as an extreme
Yeah.
example of how much work goes into this that you might never see,
And did
right?
they push through and what, do like 5 laps of that, or
It was,
basically?
yeah, it was a 50-mile shuttle run four
Mm.
times to get to get the 200 miles there. Um, but yeah, there's just so much work, and I mean, not only that, but the amount of time it takes to plan these events, from setting up aid stations to tearing them down to even just having the supplies kind of part out to distribute to different aid stations, and then
Mm-hmm.
literally 2 or 3 days before the event have to redistribute all of those supplies to new aid
Oh yeah.
station plans, personnel, volunteers, redistribution. It's incredible. Race directors, I mean, the vast majority of these people are not getting rich doing what they do. It is a
Mm-hmm.
passion project, and they do not get enough kudos for it. Everyone wants to go run and blame people whenever anything goes wrong, but I feel like it's rare maybe just to take the time to appreciate what these people do bring to the
Mm-hmm.
sport. We wouldn't have a sport without them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and
Uh,
that's one thing I love too, is like the people that volunteer for the races or help at the aid stations. They're always just like, they've got the right mindset. They're always like pretty positive and very supportive for the runners. And that's what I always say too, like when it comes to endurance sports, that's one of my favorite parts. Is it's like it's a solo sport, but like you kind of feel like everybody's on your team in the same sense. Like everybody's typically everybody's pretty encouraging, or like if somebody's, I don't know, missing something, or I've been both of my legs locked up with cramps sitting in a ditch, and like every other person that passes me is like, oh hey, you need a salt tablet or something like that.
Oh yeah, it's
So
horrible to pass a runner dealing with those issues.
hmm
Yeah, I mean, because we've all been there, right? Like we know what it's like to be that person, and whatever we can do to help that person keep moving forward is always a huge thing.
hmm
100%. I always tell people, I came for the sense of community. No, sorry, backwards. I always tell people I came for the challenge. I stayed for the sense of community, though, that this
hmm
sport brings. It's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you'll run 10 or 20 miles with someone on one of these races, and they will be your best friend.
Oh yeah.
There's this guy that I met out at Cloud Splitter, not my first time, but my second time running that race. I don't know why. I like to go back and rerun a lot of races, probably because I'm not happy with my time the first time through. But I met this guy, and about a year later, I was pacing him at Moab 240, and then last year he came out and crewed and paced me for Uray 100 and Bigfoot 200. I mean,
Mm.
took like 6 weeks out of his life to come out here and train with me and do all these
Oh wow.
things. And I don't even think that is that rare of a situation, to be
Yeah,
honest.
when you do that kind of stuff, like you just bond so fast. Like one of my best friends that I've made out here since I moved out, the literally the first time we ever hung out, we did Pikes Peak from the bottom of a bar. So the first thing we did together was hike a marathon like 8,000 feet up up a mountain and back down. So yeah, you just bond
Yeah.
really quick doing that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, you'll know one another real fast.
hmm Yeah. So you mentioned going like back to races, and like something I was curious about, because people ask, what's your time for this distance, or and things like that, and then it's like when you get into ultras, it's like, well, there's the 50 miler I did with 4,000 feet of gain, and then there's the 50 miler I did with 8,000, or like you said, you've done hundreds with double like 40 plus thousand feet of gain, or mine's going to be around 20. um so yeah, like what kind of differences like stand out to you, uh that I don't know, maybe people might not think of, or just what's your perspective when you do a race that's the same distance but has like 2x, one of the other factors within it.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's really rare for someone to ask you what your times are on these races. Like I know
Yeah.
like half marathon, that's so common, right? Like, oh, have you BQ'd? Like, what's your time, right?
hmm
The biggest question I get with some of these bigger endurance races, 100 plus mile distances, hey, how many hundreds have you done? I mean, it's
hmm
measured by finishes, by belt buckles.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so rare to get a question about like, well, what
I
time did
suppose
you
I
do
think
that
the
race
people that
in?
ask me that are like people that don't run the big distances, yeah, they're all like either not runners or maybe half marathon runners.
Yeah,
And then I'm just like, it's like this is my time, but like what does that really mean to a
right,
degree?
right. It's a different mindset, and it's also I think less performance based in this community. In the ultra
hmm
running community, it's more achievement, accomplishment based,
Yeah.
which, well, as a very mid pack runner, I think is
hmm
awesome.
Yeah,
um,
people like I feel like I'll when I'm talking about the running accomplishments I have, it almost sounds like I'm like underplaying it, because I know I just did the Royal Gorge 50K this spring, and I was like really
nice.
happy with my time, but at the same, and I was like I think in the top like 25% of uh the people that did it, but at that same time the person that got first finished 2 hours ahead of me. So it's just like the scope of these races, and how was it like Courtney DeWalter can finish like 10 hours ahead of second place or something. you
Right.
know
Yeah, and well done. That's awesome. Congrats, man.
hmm
But you're right. Some of these elite athletes, I mean, it just puts things in a different
hmm
perspective, a different lens. I mean, one thing that comes to mind based off that is Leadville this year. The record
hmm
fell. I mean, it had been a 19-year standing record at the Leadville
yeah, what
100.
was it before? Because the new one's like 15 something, was it? uh
Oh gosh, I don't have it all off the top of my mind. Shoot.
yeah, I feel like
But
I just saw that on the Instagram like today, I think, but
it was definitely 15 something. The record is low 15, and the previous record had been about mid 15. I want to say it was like
oh, okay.
15 or 19 minutes, something along those lines were shaved off of it.
Yeah.
And we're talking an average pace of, I want to say it was 9:13. That's a grade
hmm
adjusted pace of like 8:15 for 100 miles in a row.
Yeah, right.
at 10,000
At
feet
that
with
elevation.
13,500 feet of gain. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just,
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, holy crap, because you know what the typically the big thing is like for the next level beyond finishing is the like finishing under 24 hours mark for a 100 miler, and that's 9 hours even beyond that. That's
right. Well, and those, the people, the average people, the mere mortals among us who are doing sub 24-hour hundreds, they're usually happening on flatter courses closer to sea level.
hmm.
It's not exactly the most common for just casual athletes to be hitting those kind of marks out here in Colorado, for
Yeah.
example. Yeah.
Hmm.
One thing that's so cool, though, again, going back to the sense of community, but also, these really fast runners, Run Rabbit Run, which we mentioned earlier, really cool
Hmm.
race where there's a tortoise and a hare category.
Oh yeah, yeah. I follow a runner that's doing that again, and yeah, she said something about like going into the hair category.
Yeah.
I forget what the differences are with that.
So the hare category, they start at noon. Tortoises start at 8 a.m. So
Okay.
tortoises have a 4 hour jump on the hares, and
Hmm. Oh, you gotta chase. You gotta chase down the slow group instead
it's
of the fast people going first.
yeah, exactly. And it brings to it a really interesting dynamic. And both times I've done it, I've been in the tortoise category. And the most recent time, last year, I was running it, and I heard, this, hey, runner behind, and first place guy's coming up on my
Hmm.
rear, right? I tripped over my trekking pole trying to get out of his way
Oh
so he
no.
could keep running. Dude stops, picks me up, dusts me off,
Mm,
checks to make sure I'm all right, and then keeps running and still gets like first place.
yeah.
Hours later, right? But
Yeah.
like,
That's awesome.
still gets first place. It's really cool. Because even some of these top placing people, I don't feel like it's very often that they're, bad talking some of these more mid pack athletes.
Hmm.
It's just, yeah, it's
Yeah.
completely.
Everybody that does it, like, they know how just hard it is. It's like you can't. There's no bad talking somebody doing those kind of races after you've done one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly that.
So what's your? I know you said you have the 300 coming up. What's your? Well, you said Moab 240. Have you done anything longer than that, or is that
So the longest I've personally run was Bigfoot 200 last year, and that was
okay?
207 miles.
Okay.
I paced my buddy at Moab 240, which was a lot of fun just to see.
Mm-hmm.
I saw about 100 miles
What
of
kind
that
of gain does
course.
that one have?
Moab,
Yeah.
oh,
Do
it
you know?
it also has a decent clip. I'm trying to reach back a few years in memory, but I want to say it has 30,000, almost maybe 28 or 30,000 feet of gain.
Okay.
Just a
Yeah.
casual Everest. No big deal. Gosh, I need to know that soon. I'm going to be out there captaining an aid station and playing medic at a few aid stations after that a
Mm-hmm.
little later this year. So I need to get all those stats back fresh in my mind here soon.
Nice.
But yeah, next year's going to be a huge year. I have about 1,250 race miles planned right now. I'm confirmed for about 750 of those race miles. I'm going to be doing the Arizona Monster 300. I'm going to be doing Bigfoot 200 again.
Mm-hmm.
Left some time on the clock there. I want to go back and just prove to myself
Mm.
what I'm capable of. And then, yeah, I got to jump on the Moab 240 course next year also. I've been sitting on the sideline for that one for too long at this point.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be picking up probably 5 or 6 different 100s as well. Still a little uncertain on which hundreds because December and January is when the lottery gods come into play.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know,
remember sitting at Fossil Brewery. I think I forget what races it was, but the lottery was happening for like two big races, and everybody was just hanging out watching that.
yeah, the same morning every December, there's going to be the Western States and the Hard Rock
Mm,
lotteries.
yep.
And like, come on, like how cool that those both happen in the same morning. And yeah, if you know any watch parties in town, oh, you got to cue me in because I'd love to be checking
Yeah.
out a watch
Yeah. I'll
party
see
for
if they do
those.
that again this year.
Yeah. There's Leadville 100. That lottery is in January. And then Badwater 135. I never thought I'd be interested in that race, but here I
Mm.
am kind of chomping at the bit. And that one's unique. It's not a direct sign up, and it's also not a lottery. There's actually a selection committee. So you have to put
Oh,
together an
okay.
application.
Yeah. Trying to remember if that's the one that David Goggins talked about trying to get into in his book. I don't know if you've read or listened to David Goggins' book, or if you know even who he is.
I know who he is.
Okay.
I won't. claimed to be very well read in
Yeah,
his stuff,
sure.
though. Yeah.
But like the kind of funny story is he was trying to get into this ultra, and yeah, there was a guy, I don't know if it's somebody on a committee, that's what's make me think it's that one, and they're like, well, he's like, oh, I've been like through Navy SEAL training 3 times. I've done, I think he'd also done the Ranger School and all this stuff, and the guy who would be the one choosing to let him in was like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's cool and all, but like I've seen like your types before, and they still have no idea what it feels like to run for 100 miles. So he told him he had to go run 100 miles within 24 hours, and then he'd consider it. And so he went and did this is like crazy story. He went and did one of those ones where you just do like a lap over and over,
Oh no.
and he hit like 100 miles in like 17 hours or something, and like practically put himself in the hospital. But so he submitted that, and then the race guy's response was like, oh, okay, I did it in 17 hours. Why'd you stop?
I
So,
wouldn't be surprised if you're talking about Lazarus with Barclays. That totally has Lazarus all
oh,
over
no,
it.
I
I'm
think
not
I know,
sure.
I
I'm
think
not
I know
sure.
that one, but
Okay, okay.
yeah, it was a more normal
Really?
race.
Oh, that cracks me up. That's
But
hilarious.
yeah, and then once he started getting into ultras, okay, he's like, okay, yeah, I get it. He's like, I get why he's skeptical of those military guys that, think just even like Buds is crazy, but how this kind of stuff is still just something on its own level.
It is really interesting though how many participants in these ultra runners are former military anyway.
Hmm.
I mean, huge population there for sure.
Yeah, I'm
Big
sure it
demographic.
definitely sets up the mindset, which is a big part. And yeah, that was another question that came to mind, kind of like what were the big differences or like new things to overcome that you saw as so like for me building up to like a 50 miler, I thought that was kind of comparable to like an Ironman in difficulty, similar amount of like time to finish. But what did you see as like the big steps to overcome or differences as you went from like 50 maybe to like 100 and then 100 to 200? I'm saying I'm signed up for 100 and I can't even really fathom what that's going to feel like. So, add another 100 on top of that. Or kind of like if there were any differences or what had to change within you to get to that next level.
I mean, I don't think there's any like one path that athletes have to follow. Like I
Hmm.
meet people who do 200s where they're like, "Oh, I ran a 50K before this," or like
Yeah.
crazy stuff like that. That's beyond me. I could never do that. But once you start looking at longer races, I feel like marathons and 50Ks are kind of cut from the same cloth. I mean, you're
Hmm.
talking a 5 mile difference there. If you can do one, you can probably do the other.
Hmm.
And I'll say the same thing about the 50 mile and the 100Ks, right? Like, so those are
Yeah.
good stepping stones, like those two groupings to the next there.
Yeah, like I did. I mean, my first 50 a week after getting COVID. I mean, sure, trained plenty, but like that was rough, and I just gritted my way through that. And that's why I told work like I'm not going to travel for work at all. At least like the month leading up to the 100, because I got COVID from a work trip a week before.
Oh,
So I was like, I know I could not get through the 100 with as sick as I was.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, when you start jumping though from the 50 mile or the 100K distance up to 100 miles, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot that really prepares you for that difference, right? Like,
Hmm.
that is huge. Um, but at a certain point, it becomes more mental than physical anyway.
Hmm.
Uh, when I first started getting into ultras, there was a woman. Her name was Julie Tertine, now Julie Sanquist. She's married now, but
Hmm.
she was one who kind of got me into the ultra scene. And so many of the things that she used to tell me have stayed in my head. And I'm pretty sure this was one of her sayings: is as long as you keep everything beneath your ankles and above your shoulders good, you're gonna get to the finish line.
Teeth. Yeah. Okay.
So like
That makes
yeah,
sense.
keep your feet and your head good and you're gonna be fine. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes to.
Hmm.
But keep your feet good. It's like, hey, do you know your blister patterns? Are you preventatively taping anything if necessary?
Hmm.
Uh, Little known thing I've learned that's important is you actually want to like file down calluses. You don't really want to hit these races with calluses
Oh,
because
okay.
if you blister under calluses instead of heading, they just kind of spread underneath the callus and get
Mm,
huge. So
that's good to
often when
know.
you hear about people's like heels degloving, they probably have a super
Ugh.
calloused heel, for example.
Yeah.
So like yeah, foot maintenance and then knowing when to stop and take care of your feet, popping blisters. Watch some videos on how to apply like Leuko tape or KT tape, whatever your thing is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of these race medics, they're like nurses, they're EMTs, they're amazing in urban settings. Like if you get
Hmm.
shot by someone, you want these guys there.
Yeah.
But not a lot of them have more of the wilderness stuff that tends to become really pertinent in these ultra marathon scenes.
Okay.
So a little bit of that know-how on your own will go such a long way, because you don't know if that medic at the next aid station is going to have any idea how to handle your feet. I mean,
Hmm.
that is just not a given, right?
Yeah.
And then keeping your head in good shape is so important. And I mean, mental toughness is something, it definitely, to a degree, comes from training.
Hmm.
You
You
know,
have to like have some form of like evidence and confidence to a certain degree.
oh, yeah.
Hmm.
And I always tell, a lot of the athletes I coach, on the days where they didn't want to get out of bed or they could barely tie their shoes that day because they didn't want to run and they still went out and did the workout. I
Hmm.
mean, you're unlocking levels with mental toughness when you're doing that.
Hmm.
When you have a weakness in running, if you hate climbing elevation or if you hate technical, descending,
Yeah, that's me.
those technical descending.
Yeah, downhills are rough for me.
Oh
I'll climb all
man,
day.
yeah,
Hmm.
okay. I have some great trail suggestions for you around here.
Yeah, I think
uh,
that's been good and like a confidence booster for me is living in the Springs and such a mix of trails, that can get like real rocky and techy. So I
mhm.
know the I'm Tough 100 that I'm doing is supposed to be pretty rocky and techy, or
Yeah.
can get to those spots. So I'd like, yeah, I'm not too nervous because I feel like this is a good area. I don't know, since you've done races in a lot more places, would you kind of agree that this is a good, like,
You'll see the worst of what the U.S. has to offer in Colorado.
yeah,
And I say that with so much love.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, no, I mean, if you can run races around here, you can run races just about anywhere. The one thing that we don't always get here in Colorado, some races will bring a lot of water to the table. For example,
mm,
Creed 100, I mean, you are hitting so many high elevation streams in that race, but not a lot of them. And that's the only thing that sometimes we miss running races primarily in Colorado is, if you're out in Virginia, Georgia, there are a lot of places where every quarter mile, half mile, you're going to be getting your feet wet again.
ooh,
And if you're
yeah,
not used to that, that can throw you off your game a little bit for sure.
mm-hmm,
But for the most part, yeah. I mean, you can also just grab the garden hose and soak your shoes before you go for a run and, practice that way, right?
mm-hmm,
I don't
yeah.
actually recommend that.
I'm
Don't do that.
Yeah. I'm so curious. There's so many things that I'm just like curious about with this 100, like what the experience is going to be like cuz thus far I haven't had hardly any issues with like big blisters or anything. But you see like so many videos online of people that they do 100 and their feet are just like absolutely annihilated. But like I don't know, to me I feel like you said if you do like the right kind of maintenance along the way with the race. Like I don't feel like that's necessary. Like your feet don't necessarily have to be destroyed by the end.
No, they
But
don't. And there's this. So I love the community with ultra running, and I just naturally agree with so much of the sentiment out there. I'm going to take a controversial stance on something real fast,
hmm.
though. There seems to be this sentiment that gritting through races to get to the finish line, almost no matter what, is always the right call and should be admired.
Mm,
I don't agree with that. I don't think so. I've seen people who have finished races, but their feet are so destroyed that they won't be running for 3 or 4 months. That
yeah.
infection and even
Ooh.
gangrene could be a real concern by how destroyed they are. I think there is so much to be said for understanding not simply could I get to the finish line, but is it responsible for me to get to the finish line in my
Hmm.
current state? And I really like to champion people who make responsible decisions, whether it's to continue forward or to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend that attempted her first marathon this spring, and like had just started getting really bad. I don't know, like IT band symptoms a little bit before. Unfortunate timing. But she pushed through, I think, till race 22, and yeah, it was like the next 3 months she like could barely run and stuff like that, and I don't know, yeah, it's like a mix of like feeling proud like how far you pushed, but then at the same time you're like, oh, I just missed out on a whole bunch of mountain activities with my friends during that time. So yeah, that's a definitely a thing to balance in this sport for sure.
Yeah. But I'm that guy who would rather string together, 6, 10 races in a season. Some people, they only have one race on their docket, and
Yeah, so like honest, I'm like not gonna lie. For me, with the 100 miler, it's like I don't know. I go into that when it's that next big race, the mentality of kind of like, you know, these races a little different. But I like to say, I'm either gonna like finish or be pulled out on a stretcher, which I wouldn't go that far in like one of these mountain settings because that's an even bigger deal than like an Ironman where you're just constantly surrounded by people anyway. But
yeah, and I mean maybe there's something to that for your A race, like for the Arizona Monster, the 300 miler. I mean, it's going to be
mhm,
one of those things where either I'm finishing that race or I'm a medical drop. Like I am not
mhm,
going to make that decision on my own. I'm going to keep going
yeah,
just about no matter what.
mhm,
So yeah, balancing it.
yeah. What about like tips for this will be the first race where I'm gonna like bring a crew with me, which I'm still kind of deciding. Have some pacers for that later portion of the race. Just obviously seems like a smart idea. Um, so any like I don't know general tips for how to go about that or
I absolutely love race logistics. I
mhm.
mean, like this makes me tick in all the best ways. I love this stuff. Um, Truthfully, I mean, gosh, I don't know how long your episodes normally are here. We could probably do an episode just on race logistics, to
Yeah,
be truthful.
yeah, maybe that would be maybe we'll put uh go a little light today, and then yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be an interesting episode for sure. I'll take note of that.
yeah. But I mean, to give you like the briefest possible, bird's eye view of that kind of thing,
Hmm.
it comes down to a lot of things. Are your crew pacers, are they runners?
Yeah, yeah. So I've met enough people out here, and I still need to. I know plenty of people that I think would be willing, so I need to start reaching out and see who exactly would be available. Lewis, he'd be one. So I know he's easily good for like 20 miles, and I know other people that could run probably at least that too.
Yeah,
If they're fresh without much trouble.
yeah.
So yeah, so I think I'm set on like able pacers. For me, yeah, just the question like something that I tell people when I'm talking about my 100 is like that 50 miler. That's a distance I could grit through and live off of aid station snacks and stuff like that. But I feel like for the 100 and how much dramatically longer that time frame is going to be, I'm going to want to like ensure I have real food at points. And yeah, like you said, there's just a logistic aspect that gets unlocked at this level.
Absolutely. And I mean, in simplest terms, you want to control as many variables as possible going into these big races
Hmm.
because there are going to be unexpected, unknown variables that crop
Hmm.
up to try to take you down. And planning, I mean, just about every step of the way is the best way to do that. I
Hmm.
mean, knowing that you're going to change your socks every 20 or 30 miles, change your shoes a couple times throughout the race, having a pace chart, an A, a B, and a C time for when you might be coming through these different aid stations, knowing what food you are at least planning on having at different miles. Now,
Hmm.
your stomach might tell you something entirely different on race day, right? But having all these things planned, and even having a plan B for nutrition, 100% important because sometimes you can train with something for an entire cycle and then come race day, it's just like, yeah, we're going to puke that up today.
Hmm.
So having all of those things figured out and then having all that information communicated with your crew and with your pacers.
Hmm.
Make sure they have your pace chart. So based on your last aid station in time, they know when you
Hmm.
might be coming through the next one.
Yeah, and I'll have my InReach Mini on me. So theoretically, as long as they're in Signal, I think they'll be able to basically live track me, which will be
Nice.
nice. But
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good point though. If you don't have one of those devices.
100%. Yeah. And just, yeah, making sure that these people are aware of what your specific needs are. Like if you're
Hmm.
going to be doing a sock and shoe, like a foot reset at an aid station, make sure they know that. Make sure they have those things ready for you.
Hmm.
If there's a drop bag at an aid station, first of all,
Yep.
never depend on your crew to get you drop bag materials to the aid station. If they
Okay.
get lost, if they have a flat tire, what if they can't get to that aid station?
Hmm.
If there's a drop bag that can be had at that aid station, pack that drop
So
bag
like the essentials for sure in drop
100%.
bags.
Because here's the thing, your crew can arrive at an aid station and they can grab your drop bag. They can have all that ready for you at your little crew spot.
True.
They can put it back afterwards. I mean, they can do all that stuff for you, right? But if they don't get there for any reason, act of God, right? You still need those things.
Yeah, that's something I need to start studying up is, yeah, what aid stations it is they can get to. And I think we have plenty of able vehicles at hand, which is good. But yeah, it's a factor.
And a lot of races are even starting to do vehicle limitations. I mean, Leadville even did crew limitations. You could only have 4 crew. We had wristbands. I mean, it was like all kinds of official, you know? And that's a bigger race. I don't know that I'm tough or some of those other races are to that point yet anyway.
Yeah.
But again, the more you know, the more you have a handle and the more you can convey to your crew what the expectations are, what your needs are going to be during this race, the more effectively they're going to be able to help you and support you to get to that finish line.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome tips there. That's it's exciting. I've never had to, like study for a race before. That's kind of how I see it. So.
Oh man, I get so nerdy with it. I have like a full crew packet with like everything from like, hey, here's how I have a recipe book. Like, hey, if you're making me a sandwich, 2 pieces of turkey, 2 slices of cheese, this much mustard, whatever it is for you, 3 pickle chips. Because I know that I am so picky with food when I get into, you know what I mean, the heart of these races.
Yeah.
That even if they get my ratios off, not only might it not be palatable, but I know calorie counts. I know sodium levels in the food that I'm eating, and if they deviate from a plan, if they make me a breakfast burrito and forget to put the bacon in it, oh man, that might be a problem. So maybe I go a little overboard on the planning side, but yeah, it hasn't let me down yet. It's always worked.
Yeah. Awesome.
Here, I'll flip the script on you.
There we go.
What are you looking to do at your I'm Tough? Do you have any like goals in mind?
Like mentally, just ultimately finish, meet the cutoff.
What is the cutoff there?
36 hours.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I don't like my gut's telling me like I think I could easily be in those like lower 30-hour range. Like the Crested Butte 50 miler that had like 8,200 feet of gain. And I was like sick as a dog, and I did that in 14 hours and 20 minutes.
Nice.
So at my worst, I did that. And then I've got quite a bit of training now between then and now. So yeah, it's for me, it's really just, it's a completion race, in my head, since I've gotten into the ultras, for whatever reason, like until I hit that triple digit mark, I was like that's what ultra means to me in my brain, even though it's technically anything over a marathon. So yeah, for me, it's just, I just want to hit that milestone.
Imposter syndrome is so real.
Yeah.
It is. I didn't really consider myself a true ultra runner until I did my schedule last year, which I did Ring the Springs 100 in June, Ouray 100 in July, Bigfoot 200 3 weeks later in August, Run Rabbit Run in September, and then Canyonlands 100 in October. And it wasn't until I actually finished out that stretch, which I don't know if it was probably a little stupid to do all that with as little experience as I had at the time, but I mean, it worked out for me, right? And it's like finally when I got that last buckle, when I like put the bookend on that schedule, is when I was like, like big sigh of relief. I think I can actually call myself a true ultra runner now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I got into coaching also, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. There was one time I was talking with a coworker who is, let's just say, not at all into this kind of stuff. And I just ran a race, and he's like, "Oh, what distance did you do?" And the words that came out of my mouth were, "Oh, just a 50K."
Right?
As if that's like,
Oh,
not
gosh.
10 times what most people would even dream of doing.
Yeah, no, we're so sadistic. Absolutely. Us ultra runners. I mean, like there are times that someone will be like, they'll know I went on a run earlier that day. A coworker, hey, what was your run today? Oh, it was just 12 miles. And like, what do you mean just 12 miles? Like that's more than the average person runs in a year, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
come on. But no, I mean, it becomes so easy to minimize what we do on a day-to-day basis.
I think it's good, like in a good way. It's an activity that really humbles you and keeps you, keeps you humble.
Well, because then you still hear about these insane people who are doing 100-miler a week. I mean, Andy Glaze has been doing some insane stuff lately, just stacking hundreds weekend to weekend to weekend, and
Yeah.
like I don't think it should be possible. Pretty sure he sold his soul to the devil.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's something I was meaning to bring up, or I had a thought about. I don't know if you know who Candace Burt is.
Oh yeah, she owns
Yeah,
Destination Trail. Yeah.
yeah. She had a good podcast. So it was definitely an inspiration for this that she did for a couple years. But she did that like world record where I think it was 200 days straight. She ran a 50K, and some of that was out in like mountain trails. So not even easy 50Ks every day. And one thing I remember following along that story as she was posting about it was, like a lot of people I hear, they hear these things and their instant reaction is like, oh, that's stupid. You're just gonna destroy your body. But she's this awesome example where she was, I don't know, maybe approaching like halfway through, and she'd have some ups and downs with how the body's feeling, and then she just hit this point where she said she only got like stronger and stronger the rest of the way. And it's just a cool testament to how much human bodies can adapt to what you just put them through.
Yeah. I mean, that it's amazing. I'm gonna kind of, footnote that with some human bodies because I think some people would be in the hospital.
Yeah,
Right?
for
Like let's
sure.
be
And she
let's
has,
be real.
that like lifetime of, running before that.
Hmm.
But yeah.
What was the oh my gosh, back in 2020, the 100-mile world record was set. It was something like 11 hours. It was like
Hmm.
a 6:20
Yeah, that's
pace
crazy.
for 100 miles, something like that. It's just literally blows the mind
Hmm.
what some of these fringe extreme athletes, elite athletes are capable of.
Yeah. Yeah. One day I want to do that, like 100 miles within 24 hours, hit that mark, whether that just be like a loop race or something.
Yeah,
I think I want to do, at least 100, and then one day do that as like kind of like a time goal as well. I don't need to go do the Leadville 100 in under 24, but just know it, like do that distance within would be a pretty cool feat to do.
backyard ultras, which have really been increasing in popularity lately,
Hmm.
might be a really interesting format to try to accomplish that in.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think I've ever talked about those on the podcast. So yeah, explain what those are and how they work, because it's
Yeah.
pretty, it's a cool concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So backyard ultras, it is a 4.16-mile lap that you
Hmm.
start every hour on the hour, and if you do not start that lap on the hour, you're disqualified. It's a last man standing type event. So
Hmm.
you go until only one person is still moving forward. And even
Yeah.
that person has to finish a lap or else the race just ends with no winners. But the
Mm.
reason it's 4.16 miles for each lap is because at the end of 24 hours, you'll have run exactly 100 miles.
Oh, okay.
So if you can
Hmm.
survive 24 hours, you'll hit your mark
Yeah,
right on
yeah.
the
I could
head
hit
there.
that mark and then keep pushing, see how far I get.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Have you ever done one of those?
I've not personally ran one yet.
Okay.
I've been involved in the planning of one before,
Hmm.
and little preview. There might be a couple coming to Colorado Springs next year. Looking
Nice.
forward to getting in on the race directing action here soon.
Yeah, yeah. Let me
Um,
know if you need help with that, because
oh yeah,
I should be ideally more free next year.
let me tell you, it takes a lot to get. We were talking about how much race directors are underappreciated.
Hmm.
And it takes a lot, especially to get these things off the ground. So, oh my gosh, if you're offering some help, you betcha.
Yeah,
I'll
for
take you up
sure.
on that, man. 100%. Um, but yeah, it's just a really interesting, fun format for people to see what their potential is. And what's great about those formats is it doesn't matter what distance you think you're capable of. If it's 50K, 50 mile, 100 mile,
Hmm.
come out and find out.
Yeah, yeah. You don't necessarily, yeah. Even if it's just not even trying to win, just to see what you're capable of.
Yeah, just go till you run out of fun tokens.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Have to keep that in mind. So another thing that I guess, like I mentioned, I'm just very interested to see what it'll be like doing the 100. Um, to this point, I've never done a race and been like, particularly delirious or like reaching any of those levels. So I'm definitely very curious because you hear so many stories about ultra runners, hallucinating and like crazy stuff like that. I'm curious if I'll get in touch with that or not. Curious of what kind of any experiences you've had along those lines.
Oh yeah, you'll probably lean into that, dip in a little bit here for the 100 miler. Everyone kind of has their own hallucination patterns, which I also think is fascinating.
Okay.
People seem to repetitively see
The
similar
same.
themes over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Like mine is I constantly mistake logs as downed runners, and I'll like run up to a
Oh,
log trying to like help revive this person. It's hard to CPR wood, you know?
yeah.
But in day two, night two, rather, of my 200 last year, that's when it really got interesting, and day
Mm-hmm.
three for that matter. Granted, on 200 miles, you're sleeping like a little bit, but we're
I
talking
was
like
to say,
60
yeah.
to 90 minutes a night usually, so
Mm-hmm.
not full sleep. But saw so many crazy things. I think one of my favorites was I literally saw a wood fairy pop into existence from a green orb, see me, jump while suspended midair, and then disappear through the same green orb into nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that was real, right?
yeah.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, that's wild.
But no, always interesting, always a good time. I've heard some people who hallucinate big cats in trees,
Mm-hmm.
which in
That'd be
Colorado is
creepy. Yeah,
maybe a
that's a
little
legit concern.
off-putting, too real perhaps. There was one person last year at Bigfoot 200 who was hallucinating a whole herd of dinosaurs that came through across the trail.
Just running through Jurassic Park all of a sudden.
I mean, maybe they just slipped back in time. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Found a little lost world.
Oh yeah.
So you said you got into coaching after this last year. Uh, how's that been going? You having fun with that, or what are your favorite parts of getting to dip into that side of this?
Yeah, I love coaching. It's something that is just uniting a lot of the different themes of what I enjoy doing in life kind of into one package deal.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working in a hospitality industry of one sort or another most of my life. So I've always really enjoyed helping people. And I mean, running is that's what I do with my life. It's not a hobby, it's not a side thing. I mean, that's what I
Mm-hmm.
wake up and, do every day, all day now. So being able to unite those two things has been just fantastic. It still doesn't feel real all the time, to be honest. As far as what I like most about it, oh gosh, that's hard to put into a few sentences.
Mm-hmm.
I work with some runners who are very much, I guess you would say, novice runners.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were like, oh, I did track and field in high school and I was on junior varsity and I haven't ran in 10 years and now I want to get back into it. And helping them go basically from the couch, more or less, to hitting their first 50K, 50 miler has been so much fun to watch that progression.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'll have some athletes come to me who are already very accomplished, sometimes, collegiate track and field athletes who want to switch focus from road running now that they've graduated and get
Mm-hmm.
into the trail scene. And that's a lot of fun too, to see, hey, what is this already, maybe not elite level athlete, like they're not getting paid to run, right?
Yeah.
But people who are far more talented than I myself will ever be
Mm-hmm.
in the running sphere, and just see what we can do together to get them performing as high a level as possible on trails is also a lot of fun, and everything in between. So really, it's just helping people maximize their potential as far as what their time goals can be,
Mm-hmm.
their race goals can be, but also help to train them to do things the smart way rather than the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I've always kind of, I don't know why I've always been like against mentally like trying to get a coach or something. Like, I think part of it for me, because I know I'm not at that elite level. There's people finishing hours ahead of me, and like that doesn't bother me. But I think like part of the accomplishment for me is almost like in a sense of like doing it all myself to a degree. Like, I'll study on my own. I follow other athletes, can like kind of mimic their stuff. But yeah, I don't know why. Like, I don't know why I've always been so averse to like maybe just trying to get a coach for something. So I definitely want to like promote. If you're thinking about it or trying to get better, like definitely, I'm sure a coach can be a game changer for sure.
it can be. And I'm over here kind of laughing and trying not to chuckle because that was my exact mentality for like my first 2.5 or 3 years of ultra running. Is
Yeah.
I really had a lot of pride in being entirely self-taught and self-trained. And I mean, if that's something that gives you pride, like that's amazing. Like I'm
Hmm.
never going to tell someone that everyone should have a coach, that that's the right path for every individual. Uh, but what I can say is when you do start working with a coach, they're going to be able to give a new perspective to your training
Hmm.
that simply wouldn't be there without that head looking over your shoulder. They're going
Yep.
to see things that you don't. They're going to have ideas that you haven't encountered before. You're always going to learn something, and that's always going to make you better in some capacity. Even now, I hired a coach more recently, Matt Urbanski, who's a very accomplished runner in his own right. He's done like a 14-hour 100 miler. He's out, in France and Italy right now, getting ready
Hmm.
for UTMB. Um, Really talented runner and great coach. I've been working with him for maybe 8 weeks now, and already I'm seeing some fitness gains that are taking me back to when I was a younger guy.
Hmm.
He really quickly learned how I operate as a runner and how to start getting the best out of me. I did last year's schedule, those five pretty big races in close succession,
Hmm.
self-coached, self-taught, but for the 300 miler coming up next year, and then just from transitioning race to race for the 1250 race miles I have planned, I decided, yeah, it's worth
Hmm.
it. Not to sound petty here, but I'm already spending enough money on these races. I may as
Yeah.
well hire
Hmm.
someone to help me maximize my potential at them.
Hmm.
Um, so I do think that coaching has a lot of promise for the average runner, however,
Hmm.
and it can be a great idea. Like I kind of touched on earlier, it's someone who's going to show you how to work smarter and not harder. A lot
Hmm.
of times you can get the same physical gain and adaptation in, let's just say, a given week, right? If you do it a really smart, and by smart, what I mean is like a very scientifically backed way. Every runner is different, but there are still some general themes that are going to run through the sport there and in training in general.
Hmm.
And having someone who's aware of a lot of those different ways to maximize runners' potential, you can get better on less time, whether it's
Hmm.
running, strength, nutrition. I mean, you name it. These guys, they're professionals for a reason. And yeah,
Yeah.
I would wager they could help the average athlete up their game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they really can be a big shortcut. Uh, I mean, over the, I guess at this point, like 12 years, I've been doing endurance stuff. And yeah, every like race, you learn something more. And, if you could just hire somebody and, they already kind of have some of those answers and tips. Like my first half Ironman was the one where I was both legs locked up sitting in a ditch because I had like no concept of like in race fueling.
What
Like,
is electrolytes?
yeah, yeah. Looking back at it, I'm like, oh my god, like, yeah, not at all surprised that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then now, yeah, now I'm to the point where even this season, I think I've like noticed a big gain of just even more and more electrolytes. Like, I'm definitely the type of, I don't know, my body needs a good chunk. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's something. Yeah, you could probably learn a little faster from a coach than just doing it.
100%. And the other kind of hidden piece in all of it, even when you're not learning directly from them, it's the accountability.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big thing.
Yeah.
Knowing, because if you're self-coached, right? Some of us have amazing discipline and will never miss a day of running. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like more often it's like, oh, well, that 4 mile run today, I'm really busy. I haven't fueled well. Probably not going to get the most gains from doing that workout anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But man, when you know that there's someone else looking over your shoulder, it's going to be maybe not even getting mad, right? Not like yelling at you, but just like, "Hey, I noticed you missed that run. Everything okay?"
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more motivating, not just to get out there and do the runs, but we're talking about nutrition right now, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of coaches are going to tell you, "Hey, on long runs, I want you hitting this calorie amount per hour, including this many grams of carbs per hour, this electrolyte plan." And having someone who's going to hold you accountable to sticking to that
Mm-hmm.
and maximizing all of that knowledge, the experience by doing, is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've reached a point in my life where like doing training runs and working out is almost more like habit than, discipline at this point. But I think that difference is, getting the quality and like prepping for the run. So yeah, having uh doing the run you planned, I guess in general, or yeah, having that proper fueling along with it, Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to think about, especially in these big races. Because yeah, like a 5K or even up to half marathon or marathon, you can like just kind of show up and probably just grab what's at the aid stations, uh, things like that. But you go do a 3 to 5 hour long run, self supported in the mountains. There's a lot more to think about.
Oh yeah. If you don't fuel right, you might not get over that final ridge to get back to town, right?
Yeah.
That's where that Garmin really becomes helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always a big fan of out and back routes, even on the roadside. Just forces you to like, well, nope, I gotta finish. I
Yep.
can't just cut the circle short or something.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's time consuming too. That's a big difference between road and trail, because an 11-mile road run, might take you, if you're a pretty decently quick runner, that'd be what, I don't know, little over an hour or something maybe.
Yeah.
But you go out for a typical trail run with some vert, and that's a 3 hour run now, even if you're a good trail runner.
You talking about Mount Rosa?
Oh god, roast is something else. I really liked doing I don't know if you've ever done the Limbaugh Canyon, like Raspberry Loop up in Monument. That's
No,
a
I haven't.
that's a
No.
really a nice route. It's like 11 miles, and I think you get it's somewhere like 2,500 feet of gain or something.
Yeah.
So I did that a lot last year, because when I was living in Falcon, that was the same distance away as like the Cheyenne area, canyon area is. But I have a aunt and uncle in Monument, so that was just kind of like, hey, I got a spot. Usually get some free food when I get back. It's
There's
always
the
nice.
incentive. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, just the amount of time it takes switching over to trail running. But also like the thing that's why I know I love trail running is I might be like physically to a point on a long run where I'm like, okay, I could really be done running right now, but I'm still like happy to be out on the trails. Like that's like I like being where I am. Whereas I remember long road runs, I'd just be sitting there like, oh man, I wish I was just sitting on the couch in air conditioning. Like then you start daydreaming about the just being at home side. Whereas out on the trails, I'm just like genuinely just happy to be out there, even though I'm maybe physically miserable at that point of the run.
There's something magical about the trails, right? It's
Hmm.
just it's so much more like physically and mentally stimulating and engaging, right? It's
Hmm.
always going to be better, in my opinion. It's
Yeah.
always going to be better, and especially out here in Colorado or in any mountainous area where you're sometimes just getting those amazing vistas.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, take a second, stop, and check it out, soak it in. Never had runner's highs on road like I do on trail, for sure.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that mythical runner's high. You guys talk to people that just like do not believe it's a thing. I guess, I mean, until you experience it, it's like, yeah, hard to imagine just the kind of that feeling being induced from like extreme physical activity.
Oh, it's great. I didn't feel it so much until I stopped smoking weed, but yeah, now I get it all the time.
Yeah, get that stimulation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's been a fun hobby to get to. I'm kind of in this mix of like I kind of hope that the 100 miler kind of itches or like satisfies that itch on the ultra side, because it's like as much as I love it, there's also like other things I want to spend time on in life. So in this point, I'm kind of hoping the hundred's like a one and done for a while with the really big stuff. So another thing I'm like curious to see is like, am I gonna finish that 100 and like feel satisfied enough? Um, but
Like for a
yeah,
month.
right.
No, it's so
Yeah.
that's an interesting topic because I know statistically speaking, the average ultra runner in this country has a 2 to 3 year career.
Okay.
Um, but in just talking with people, it seems
Yeah.
longer. It seems like you do a 100 and you're like, oh, that was awesome. Bet I can do that faster. Or, I bet I can do a harder one. And then a few of those, and it's like, I bet I can do
that
a
that was
200.
part of when choosing a race too. Like it's like if I'm just gonna do 100 for a little while, like I want it to be a tough one. So I even found one with tough in the name.
There it is.
But yeah, I was like, I want one that's mostly unique miles if possible. Just, like full experience, I feel like, not just doing loops. And then, yeah, one with kind of a similar or more vertical gain than the previous races I've done. So, like a 50 miler with 8,000 feet of gain, doing a 100 miler with 8,000 feet of gain, which is kind of like in my head, it's like, I could have done, something tougher.
It
So,
dilutes it, right?
yeah.
How many feet of gain is I'm tough?
Around 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think
So
you
it's a
said that.
good,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it's a good amount. Good
Yeah.
amount. Not the 40 or whatever of some of the ones. That's hard. Yeah, that's wild to imagine.
I mean, they
But
become hiking races, right?
yeah, that's all the memes on the internet about trail running or what was one I saw? It's like what do they call it? I don't know, something about like trail runners, like how they just use it as excuse to something with power hiking. I can't remember it, but it's one of my favorite memes of the year.
Your Ray
It's like
100, it has a 52-hour cutoff. If you hike 30
50. Oh, okay.
if you
That's
hike
wild.
30-minute miles without, stopping, you will get to the finish line.
Yeah.
It still has like a 50% drop rate. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's a battle.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what has me feeling pretty good going into this 100 is like I'm confident that if I'm smart, and I feel like a strength I've always had in the endurance side is like being able to pace myself is something I'm pretty good at it. So yeah, I think that'll be that's another big thing that I feel like will be a bit different from the 50. The 50 is just like push, 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 but the 100's going to be like the whole time you want to be smart about your pace, going that long. So like even not like even if I have that urge to push it hard uphill, be able to govern myself. If it's like I kind of know what numbers I need to focus on for pace, but my mentality going into it is the just like a strong like hiking pace on any substantial up,
Mm-hmm.
be able to just keep like a good jog run or whatever on the flats, and then downhill just kind of like whatever speed I think I can manage without hurting myself, like whatever's not gonna beat me up going down.
And a word of advice, play it conservative. Honestly,
Yeah.
for the first 50 or 60 miles, as we touched on earlier, mile 60 is where the race really begins from a mental standpoint. And there is something that is so much more motivating if you become the hunter at that point in the race rather than
Mm.
the hunted.
Yeah, that's been a benefit in a lot of the races I've done from being good at pacing myself is I always get to hunt down a bunch of people at the end.
Oh, it's great.
That's
Gaining
always
20
fun.
spots in the last, yeah, however long the
Mm-hmm.
race.
Yeah,
It's just,
ultras is a bit different because then people get so spread out. But yeah, like triathlons or half marathons and stuff, that like last mile, just like just like almost somewhat enjoying like destroying some people's motivation because they think they're like crushing it, and then you go flying by at the end.
oh yeah, but a good
But
feeling, right?
yeah, it's all in fun. Well, awesome. That's been a lot of fun points. Yeah, I think it would be cool to do maybe a podcast, some like almost a more informative one, kind of digging into race logistics, and then I'd probably have maybe a little more to say after Will having been done a race that involves some more a kind of more logistical side. But for you, give yourself a chance to shout out your coaching efforts. Yeah, words of wisdom you want to say on that line, feel free to shout out whatever
Yeah,
way you want people to contact you. I'll definitely, if you got an email or something, throw that, in the description.
yeah, 100%. I'm always accepting new clients. Really hoping that that's going to become my primary source of income here soon. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that sphere so much, and I would love to work with some new runners as well. So I'm working for a company called Team Run Run, simply teamrunrun.com. And my name is David Everson, Everson. You can search me there. Um, yeah, I offer, full service coaching,
Mm-hmm.
running plans, strength plans, nutrition guidance, race logistics,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much whatever you could want from a coach. I absolutely offer that. I offer monthly plans to all my athletes there. I'm also, yeah, if you want to reach out via email, Davelowever, that's Davelowever davelowever@gmail.com. That'll take you right to me. And then if you would like to catch me on any of the social media platforms I'm on, the best two for me are Instagram and Strava. I just changed my Instagram handle. I don't remember what it is right now. I have to look it up.
No worries. Yeah, you let me know. I'll paste it in there.
I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, any words to like people that maybe are on the fence of doing ultras? Yeah, maybe they have different backgrounds. Maybe they've done a marathon. What would you say to those people that are like, oh, maybe I should try it, and maybe getting a coach for it?
Yeah, put one on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yep.
sign up. Like, that is the best way to make the transition. It's so easy to be like, oh, I'm not ready yet. Now's not the time.
Mm-hmm.
When is the perfect time? Like so many things
Yeah.
in life.
There just
Send
isn't.
it, right?
That's why I'm kind of like, I hope this 100 kind of scratches that itch for a bit, because I'm like, oh, there's just, I don't know, there's never going to be a better time. Life's only going to get busier. So yeah, go sign up for that race, people, and trail or not, any sort of running, definitely reach out to David if you want some help with that, and fast track your way.
Yeah. Hey,
So.
thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Definitely have you back sometime. If you found value in this podcast, please take a moment and share your favorite episode. The support would mean the world to me. And if you want to support yourselves as well as the podcast, check out my affiliate links in the description. Thank you for listening, and as always, I look forward to sharing the next episode.